Moonshiners. Tickle goes away and launches a new moonshine Operation Tickle. A name synonymous with cunning and charm, was one of the most memorable figures to ever grace the Appalachian hills. His ability to craft moonshine was legendary, and he had always been known for his unwavering loyalty to the art and the community. But as time passed, life on the mountain had begun to change, and the old ways of running a moonshine operation was slowly fading. It was inevitable. Technology, the law, and the demands of a changing world were making it more difficult to keep the tradition alive. For Tickle, though, change didn't mean defeat. It meant reinvention. The end of the old ways. The sun was beginning to set over the hills as Tickle wiped his brow with the back of his hand, standing next to the makeshift still. The smell of fermenting corn and sweet mash hung in the air, filling the valley with its familiar, musky aroma. This was his world, the world of the Appalachian backwoods, the land of rich history, where moonshine had flowed for generations. But this operation, like many others, was coming to an end. The new sheriff, a younger man who didn't understand the traditions of the mountain folk, had made it his mission to eradicate illegal distilleries. Over the past few months, he had set up roadblocks and surveillance cameras in all the wrong places. Tickle had managed to slip through the cracks a few times, but it was only a matter of time before the law caught up with him. The old ways were crumbling, and Tickle knew that it was time to leave his beloved operation behind. But instead of hiding in defeat, Tickle found a new sense of purpose. The moonshine business was changing, and if there was one thing Tickle understood, it was that change was inevitable. He had lived through it before. It was time to adapt. He packed up his tools, dismantled the still, and left the mountains for a little while. He wasn't running from the law. He was running toward the future. A new start. Tickle didn't go far. He found a small, run-down building on the outskirts of a nearby town. It wasn't much, but to Tickle, it was a blank canvas, an opportunity to create something new. The old moonshine operation would be a thing of the past, but he had something else in mind: legal moonshine. It was a brilliant idea, at least, it sounded brilliant to Tickle at the time. He had heard whispers of a new market opening up for craft spirits, and he knew he could capitalize on it. The craft alcohol movement was gaining steam, and people were looking for unique, high-quality products. Why couldn't he be the one to bring authentic, Appalachian-style moonshine to the masses? He made a phone call to an old contact who had connections in the world of business and legal distilling. A few days later, Tickle found himself sitting across from a slick businessman who looked like he had just stepped out of a boardroom. "Tell me about your idea, Tickle," the businessman said, tapping a pen on the desk. "You've got my attention." Tickle leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "I want to bring the true Appalachian moonshine to the market. I'm talking about the real stuff, made the old-fashioned way, with corn, sugar, and the kind of passion that's been passed down through generations." The businessman raised an eyebrow. "And you think people will buy this?" Tickle nodded. "I know they will. There's a hunger for authenticity in the world of spirits. People are tired of mass-produced, watered-down alcohol. They want something that tells a story, something that's made with care and history, and I can give them that." The businessman considered this for a moment before smiling. "You've got guts, Tickle. All right, I'm in. Let's make it happen." With that, Tickle's new moonshine operation was born. The rise of the legal shinny, the first step, was getting everything up to code. No longer could Tickle simply whip up a batch in the woods and call it good. This time, he had to follow the law, get licenses, and build a legitimate operation. It was a whole new world for him, one that involved a lot of paperwork, legal jargon, and meetings with regulators. But Tickle wasn't a stranger to hard work. If anything, he relished the challenge. he hired a small team of local workers, many of whom were family members and friends. Together, they built a state-of-the-art distillery in that old, run-down building. Tickle worked tirelessly, overseeing every step of the process. He wanted everything to be perfect, no shortcuts, no compromises. As word spread about Tickle's new venture, the townspeople began to take notice. They were curious, skeptical, and a bit wary. After all, Tickle was a name that had once been associated with the illegal underground moonshine trade. But over time, they came to see that this was something different, a new beginning for an old tradition. It wasn't long before Tickle's legal moonshine hit the shelves. He marketed it as Tickle's True Shine. Known to his roots and the authenticity of the product, it wasn't long before people were clamoring for a taste of his Appalachian craft spirit. The legal distillery quickly became a local favorite, and its reputation spread beyond the small town. A new kind of moonshine, Tickle's Moonshine, was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Unlike the high-proof, harsh stuff that most people associated with moonshine, Tickle's was smooth and drinkable. It had a rich, complex flavor, with hints of caramelized sugar, vanilla, and a touch of smoke from the traditional copper stills he used. It was everything a true Appalachian spirit should be, and more. But Tickle didn't stop there. He began experimenting with different flavors, infusions, and aging processes. His Tickle's Cherry Shine, made with fresh cherries from the nearby orchard, became a bestseller. His Tickle's Apple Pie Shine, infused with cinnamon, nutmeg, and real apples, was a crowd favorite. He even ventured into barrel-aged varieties, adding a touch of sophistication to his line. Tickle's Moonshine was no longer just a drink, it was an experience. People didn't just come to buy a bottle. They came to hear the story, to learn about the tradition that had been passed down through generations. They wanted to know about the history of moonshine, the challenges of running an illegal operation in the past, and how Tickle had reinvented himself to create something entirely new. Challenges and triumphs, of course. Success didn't come without its challenges. There were obstacles along the way. The local government, at first, had been skeptical of Tickle's new venture. Some of the old-timers in town were suspicious, still associating Tickle's name with the illicit moonshine of the past. And, of course, there was the ever-present competition from larger, more established distilleries. But Tickle took it all in stride. He used his charm, his knowledge, and his history to win people over. He became a beloved figure in the town, and his legal distillery became a symbol of how the past and the future could coexist. One of his biggest triumphs came when Tickle's True Shine was featured in a national craft spirits competition. His Apple Pie Shine took home the top prize, and suddenly, Tickle's operation was no longer a local secret. It was a national sensation. Orders flooded in from across the country, and Tickle found himself working around the clock to keep up with demand. But despite the success, Tickle never forgot his roots. He continued to produce his moonshine with the same care and attention to detail that he had always done. He never compromised on quality, and he never lost sight of the traditions that had made him who he was. The future of Tickle's Moonshine today, Tickle's True Shine, is a thriving business, with a loyal following of customers who appreciate the authenticity and craftsmanship behind each bottle. Tickle, now a respected figure in the world of legal spirits, has come a long way from the days of running moonshine in the hills. And though the old ways may have faded, Tickle has proven that there's always room for reinvention. His moonshine operation may have started in the shadows, but it has blossomed into something legitimate and celebrated. Tickle's legacy will live on, not just in the bottles of shine that bear his name, but in the spirit of resilience and creativity that defines him. Tickle had once been a moonshiner, running from the law, but now he was a symbol of how the past could be transformed into something new and exciting. His journey was a reminder that no matter where you come from, you can always change your path and still honor the traditions that make you who you are. The Appalachian Hills, where the sun never quite seems to reach the deep hollows, have long been home to legends. One of the most storied of these legends is Tickle, a name that once reverberated across the region's hidden valleys as one of the most respected Moonshiners in the game. He wasn't just known for the smoothness of his shine, but for the cunning and audacity it took to make it in the first place. But as the world changed, so did the ways of the old mountain men. The law had tightened its grip on the once untamed hills, and what was once a tradition now seemed a dangerous liability. Tickle, being the sharp man that he was, understood that the game was up. But that didn't mean he was done. Far from it. If there was one thing Tickle knew, it was how to adapt and survive. It wasn't long before he came up with a plan, one that would not only keep him in the moonshine business, but elevate it into something that could be enjoyed legally and embraced by the world. And so, Tickle went away, figuratively and literally, and returned with a new moonshine operation that was about to rock the craft spirit's world. The end of the old Moonshinite had been a long time coming. The shift in the wind was something Tickle had noticed for a while.